Here we are on top of rainy Eugene, Oregon, overlooking the history of the Darling family. I will be your host today with dynamic, up-close and personal interviews of this unique family. Come with me now as we look at the beginning. This is where it all began. We moved back to Eugene after a short stay in California. Well, tell us about the house that we actually moved into on Sprague Street.
The house was kind of vacant. We didn't have any furniture. We had made a table out of a door, and we borrowed furniture from people that we knew and everything. I remember it had a basement. We slept on mattresses on the floor because we didn't have any furniture, and we lived out of suitcases because all of our furniture was in storage in California. And that's mainly
something about moving back from California. I hear, in fact, you didn't even bring all your kids when you moved back.
No, we didn't bring them all. We sent a couple of them ahead. I thought about not bringing any of them.
Now, why is that?
Well, I had 4 little boys at that time, just little stair steps. And we had spent quite an interesting summer in Mexico. And when we decided to come back to Oregon, the school system got upset because I wasn't sending my kids to school, and they threatened to send me to jail because my kids were truant. Okay. So we sent Doug and Chipper on the bus to Oregon. And at the time, Doug wasn't really very interested in making the trip. The day that we took him to the bus, I had to shove him on the bus because he didn't want to come. And he was crying, and I was crying, and Chipper was mad. And everybody was all upset because we had to...
On a bus, and then they came up and stayed with me in my apartment for about a couple of weeks, I guess, till the folks came up. And they told me when they got there, they were telling me all about Tim and how he had green hair and all the adventures that you had down in Mexico and that kind of thing. And so I had to get a table. So I got a table made out of an old door, so we'd have something to sit at. And I made them spaghetti, which I'd never tried the recipe before. They ate it because I think they were hungry. But it was kind of exotic, and I don't think they liked it that much. And I got a TV set. I didn't have a TV, so I went out, and I knew we were going to have some entertainment. So I went out and I rented a TV for $5 a month, I believe, and it finally became mine. So that was my first TV. It was kind of a long time ago.
I don't remember any of the details of coming back to Eugene. I just remember some of the highlights. I remember not going to school when I was supposed to, and the truant officer coming to talk to Mom. And the next thing I knew, I was being forced onto a Greyhound bus and shipped out of state. I'm not exactly sure why. At that time, I wasn't exactly sure why. And all I knew is that I had to come to Eugene and live with Joan, who I didn't even know at the time, and Chip. I remember on the way up here, we stopped at Klamath Falls at a truck stop, and the attendant on the bus, kind of like a flight attendant in an airline, ordered breakfast for us because it was an overnight trip, and she made me eat oatmeal. And I hated Mom because she made me eat oatmeal on the bus. And I don't like oatmeal, I won't even touch it now. But we came to Eugene, Chip and I did, so that we could start back in school so that Mom wouldn't go to jail. And I didn't know Joan very well, and Chip and I were remote enough in age that I didn't trust anybody at that point very well. I just kind of kept to myself during that period because I wasn't sure what to expect. And Joan didn't have any furniture. She did have this little apartment, and it was a lot different than what I was used to. I had a lot of things, a lot of people around all the time, had dinner here and there. And Joan, I remembered one time she asked us what we wanted to eat, and all we really knew was grilled cheese sandwiches. And we got burned out on grilled cheese sandwiches after about the first 4 or 5 days, and nothing but grilled cheese sandwiches. So she decided to get adventurous, and she cooked us what she said was spaghetti, but it tasted like turpentine, I thought. And when Mom called on the phone that night to see how we were, I asked Mom why Joan was feeding us paint remover. I said I didn't remember what it was, but I don't know where she got her recipes.
Remember about it?
And from Sprague Street, where were we?
We moved to a house on the corner of 24th and Willamette. It had an upstairs, and we were there over Christmas, I remember. And Joan and I made furniture for you kids down in the basement out of cardboard boxes and stuff like that. And it was a kind of a small house, it seemed like. It was awfully crowded.
Well, one of the things I noticed is the traffic there.
Yes, it was an awful busy street. That was where we lived the first time you ever went to the store all by yourself.
Was it? I think you're wrong there, because actually it was on 8th Street. It was the first time I ever went to the store by myself.
No, because we lived there, and Doug and Chipper were in school, and you weren't in school. And you got to go all the way to that little market, to that grocery store that's right across from where Jeffrey's restaurant is now.
Well, then I guess I stand corrected. Have fond memories of this house. Of course, I don't, because I don't remember anything about it. But we asked Doug and Jeff to tell us some of their memories they have of this home.
I think probably the first thing I remember in Eugene is living up on Willamette Street, and I only had one memory at the house, and we used to sit in the bay window breakfast nook, and Mom used to make Wonder Bread toast. So I remember the polka dots on the Wonder Bread. And that's the only thing I remember.
A couple of things. One in particular, I remember we used to have a bedroom in the upstairs area. There was kind of a gabled roof with the room, so it was trapezoidal with the roof coming in at an angle, very small. Hardwood floor or linoleum floor, and we'd skate in our stocking feet on the linoleum floor. And it wasn't a very large house, so we'd play wherever we could. We had a set of toy darts, the plastic type toy darts, and I remember there was wooden stairs coming up the stair step, and we'd stand at the top of the stairway and drop the darts down and stick them in the wooden steps. And we were, just for lack of anything else to do, dropping the darts down and sticking them in the stairs. Well, Jeff was very young, and he decided he wanted to come upstairs, and he opened the door and started up the stairs, and we told him we'd throw the darts at him if he came up the stairs. And he started to go, and I think it was either Tim or Chip. I know I was involved, but I can't remember exactly who. As soon as he started, threw the dart, and Jeff jumped back, and it didn't do anything, and Jeff made some rude comments about we couldn't get him, so he took off, and I threw another dart, and I got him squarely on the top of the head. And the last thing I remember is him running down the stairs with the dart stuck firmly on the top of his head. I think it accounts for a portion of the brain damage.
Yeah. Okay.
There was another thing, though. There was an alcove area there in the dining room, and after that dart incident, Jeff had spent a lot of time sitting in there just eating Wonder Bread. A lot of Wonder Bread.
And you never really figured that out.
No. No. To this day, he kind of looks like a loaf of bread to me.
Working then for Business Equipment Center, distributor of 3M equipment, audio and video equipment, and copying machines and so forth, as their manager. We got along all right, but we still didn't have our furniture. We had a makeshift furniture around, and we did sleep on the floor, I remember, even there. And then we moved over to 8th Street and Taylor, I think it was. And on 8th and Taylor, we got our furniture back from Los Angeles.
Now I'm here with Doug on 8th Street. This house is exciting for me because this is the first time Mom ever let me go to the store by myself. Doug, what do you remember?
I remember this is the house we lived at when Patty was born.
That's right.
That's right. I remember Mom asking us what we thought about having another baby around.
Yeah, and I was so excited because, man, I wanted a baby monkey.
Then we found out it was going to be another kid.
Yeah, and it was sad because I cried for hours.
You know, when I came home and asked you boys how you'd like to have a baby, one of you said you'd rather have a puppy, and the other one said you'd rather have a pony.
And this was on 8th Street.
No, I was pregnant before we moved there. And when we lived on 8th Street was when Patty was born.
And what do you remember most about 8th Street house?
We had some very interesting neighbors, and you kids spent an awful lot of time playing with the neighbors. And we had a big bedroom that was like a dormitory that you guys lived in. The 4 of you boys had that one room together. And you did an awful lot of things out in the garage that I didn't know about was happening a lot of the time.
Boys. And when they took off for the hospital, I was over there, or came right over to babysit. And they weren't gone very long when the phone call came in that it was a girl. And I cried because I was so hoping finally.
Yeah, coming from a big family, obviously you're the youngest. How do you feel, and how's that affected you?
Well, the main thing, I think, you forget to say there is the youngest girl. I mean, when you have 4 brothers older than you, and then the 2 sisters are much older, it's like you're the only girl, you know. And people say I'm a wimp now. I think the main reason why is because here my brothers were out there camping and blowing their faces off and, you know, all that fun stuff, and I was home playing dolls, you know. I just, I think that well, I think the main thing is it's like I didn't get enlightened to all the things in life that I really needed to survive. I mean, I didn't get, you know, all the highlights, all the bailing out, you know, all the things that boys do, you know. And I was always told, well, you're a girl, you can't do that stuff, you know. And I don't know, there's some advantage of those, though. I mean, like, getting, you know, like, you guys used to always have seating priority in the car. I've got it now. I've got it for the rest of my life, you know. And, you know, stuff like, now I get everything, you know. I don't have to share with you guys. It's pretty great.
Would you say that you're spoiled?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's, I think for the 18 years that I had to put up with you guys. Now I've got it made. I don't have you guys pushing me around anymore.
Place it back.
No,
Place it back. This is my
I
place.
live here. I live here.
You were the underdog. Could you
Oh yeah, they talked me into doing anything. Like the time that we were up at Joan's house and Chip had rented a boat this time, a big metal boat with a motor, and we played around, went fishing, and did all this wild stuff. So we thought, just kind of late in the afternoon, well, why don't we take the boat all the way down the river on the way back to take it back, But we're going that way anyways. So we take off in the boat and we're, hydroplaning down the river and we're going really fast. And we get to the part by I-5 where the rapids are. And of course, Chip tries to take the best channel, and he's going through the most treacherous part of the river, going over the cliffs and the barriers, and we're going out and we're taking on large quantities of water, but we're all bailing as fast as we can, trying to keep the thing. And Chip's getting mad at us because we're not doing our jobs like we're supposed to. I mean, we're not worthy seamen to be in his boat. We're not good young sailors. I mean, we're 6 years old and we should know this kind of stuff. So Chip's yelling at us, bail out, bail out. And of course, we're hung up on the rocks. We're in the middle of the river. We're going to drown. The boat's full of water and Chip's yelling, bail out. So I did. I jumped out of the boat, just like Chip told me to. So I bailed out. And then the boat goes. And there I am. I'm on the middle of the river, all by myself on a rock. And there they go. And there they go. And it's like, they're teasing me, It's like they're going to leave me. And I'm so stupid for bailing out. So I'm there, and they pull the boat over to the next rock. And of course it's getting dark. I'm going to stay there all night. I'm hungry.
Remember the games we used to play?
Yeah, like astronaut.
I remember going camping with Tim and his prize poodle in the rain at the Coburg Hills, as was the manner at the time. You didn't camp unless it rained. We called the weatherman up. Is it going to rain? Oh, yes. Okay, go camping. We took the dog, got dropped off at the bottom, hiked in, and we were going to be gone for an extended period of day and a half, something like that. So we took enough for a week, and the dog. And we got up there, and the first thing it started to do was went from raining to thundering and storming. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, after we just had really started to get to sleep, the dog decided to go run around in the mud and come and walk on our faces. Woke us up at about 1:30. And at that point, the night sounds had just really started going, like the owls and the rain and the other associated sounds that go along with the woods. And it seemed like a reasonable thing to do at 1:30 in the morning was to go home.
Well, if you remember, at that time our sleeping bags were also soaked.
Well, that's true. We were sleeping in a puddle 18 inches deep, possibly. So we swam out of the sleeping bags and bundled up our stuff into what was full of water, just a pile, and headed down the hill with a candle lantern for light. And a candle lantern with about a 5-mile hike down out of the Coburg Hills was interesting in itself. And about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, we got down to the main road, and it was still pouring down rain harder yet, and we started walking towards Eugene, which is about 8 to 10 miles. We got as far as Armitage Park, and we couldn't hardly walk anymore because we had only had about an hour's sleep. And couldn't find any place to drive. We didn't have any money for a phone call, so we decided to go into the restroom and use the facilities, and it was dry. It was a dry place. There's no reason why we couldn't camp here. So we decided to camp in the men's restroom at the Armitage Park. That was great, actually, because we got dried out and had our stuff spread out, and everything was fine until I'd say probably 6 o'clock in the morning, just as the sun was coming up. We heard a car pull up, and we thought it was the police. So we got scared, and then somebody come barging in the door, screamed, threw up their arms, turned around, and ran out. And we realized it was just a truck driver who come to use the restroom. Well, there was a dog and 2 boys sleeping in the floor of the restroom. I'm sure that he was very petrified to find somebody in there at 6 o'clock in the morning. But we continued walking on towards home as far as Dairy Queen on Coburg Road. And at that point we called about 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning to come and get retrieved.
There to 11th Street, and from 11th Street we lived there for quite a while. We moved to Broadway, where we lived about 7 years.
Here we are on West 11th, and with me today is Jeff. Jeff, can you tell me some of the things you remember about this house?
Well, I remember we always had lots of puppies. We had family reunions. I remember the time Doug tried to jump off the roof.
That's right, Batman style.
With a cape.
You know, but not only that, Mom also was a Cub Scout leader in this very house.
This Cub Scout, den mother.
What do you remember most about that?
Well, I remember that we had a lot of things going on down in the basement at that time. That the kids built a lot of things. That Doug built a clubhouse in the basement there. And then we had trees and things in the back that the boys all climbed in and played games and things like that. And I remember the upstairs in that house, we had like a dormitory. We had it partitioned off. Every kid had his own area. We put up curtains so that each of you would have a section that belonged to you. It's kind of like living in a barracks. And I remember the fence blew over, and so Doug took the boards from the fence and took them to the
On
basement.
West 11th for a while, and that was the first house that I used to go to the store by myself. I used to get to walk 2 blocks all by myself and go to Ken's Market and charge things. we wouldn't have enough money, so they say, we'll get your dad when he comes in later. And we say, okay. So Dad would come in later, and they'd say, Jeff didn't have a nickel, so Dad would pay our nickel that we forgot to pay. And I remember walking back and forth to school. We went to kindergarten there and went to Lincoln School. I remember the time that Mom made me sleep in Patty's stupid bed. Patty had this real dumb pink canopy bed. And like, I was so embarrassed to sleep in this bed. I cried for hours. But that was the only bed Mom would let me take a nap in. So.
Now we're at probably our favorite house. We as kids grew up, for the most part, right here on Broadway Street. Let's go now and talk to the current owners, shall we? As you can see, they definitely need some work on their lawn. Notice it's also for sale. Hi, we're doing a family history, and we lived in this house for many, many years. And I noticed it was for sale and everything, and I was just wondering how long you lived here.
What's your name?
My name is Tim Darling.
I know your brother. I remember Kit.
Oh yeah? Yeah.
He was here living here when we got
That's
the
right.
house.
That's right. We moved out, and he lived there for a few years.
Right. It was 78.
In '78.
Yeah.
And you're the current owner now, and you're selling the house?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. It hasn't changed a lot since we've been here.
No.
We lived here. In fact, it's nice. It's a beautiful house.
Why are you filming this?
We're making a film, and this is my brother Doug, and we're gonna surprise our family with this. They don't know we're doing this, so we just thought. Oh, sorry to bother you and all your time and everything, but we were wondering, can we go around in the alley and take a look from the other view? Do you mind if we do that?
Yeah, I've got a new fence over there. You can't get in.
Oh,
I'll
you
go
can't.
over it for you.
Oh, would you?
Sure.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Inside.
This is great. I really appreciate you doing this for us.
Nice to see you.
Come on back. We had so many fond memories back here. This is, as you can remember, our backyard. We did a lot of crazy things. In fact, we were on the top of the roof one time, and we took a rope and put it all the way across. That tree wasn't quite as big, and we slid down it from the top all the way down to the end. And I remember lots of times Doug, in fact, jumped and hung on this wire and almost electrocuted himself. What else do you remember, Doug? In fact, believe it or not, this is a true story. There's a Fiat buried in the back, the very back there.
Having a backyard full of dead Fiats, playing on the power poles and getting in trouble. Doug getting electrocuted, going hand over hand up.
A monster in those days, I know. On Broadway, he and David Anderson were always building shacks out in the backyard, and they used about 100 pounds of nails on the first 3 boards, bent them all over and so forth, but they had a ball.
We were living there when you and Doug decided to have a little fisticuff fight, and I decided that if you wanted to have a fight, that I would wrestle. I would referee while you guys were going to do this, and so we moved the furniture back, and I let you go at it. And pretty soon, you guys got to pushing and shoving and laughing, and somebody connected, and the blood began to come. And I thought Doug had broken your nose. I took you to the doctor. Your nose was fine. The next day I took Doug to the doctor. His hand was broken. Needless to say, I was kind of embarrassed about that, to think that I had instigated that.
Yeah, I remember that fight. That's right. I whipped you.
You whipped me?
Yeah, I whipped you. Don't push me.
Oh, you didn't want I broke your nose, man!
Not again!
Remember the time that you were over, I think, on Broadway Street, and we were all playing in this little pool?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, what happened? Tell me about that.
It was on the 4th of July weekend, and it was really hot, and we were all sitting around playing in this little wading pool. And Timmy was getting funny with the hose and squirting me with hose. And I thought, all right. So I took off. I grabbed the hose and started running after him. Of course, the hose ran out, and I kept running down the block. I got down to the end of the block. I fell, slipped on somebody's wet grass, and fractured my wrist. Was in a cast for 6 weeks.
Sure. We've decided to give you a special treat today. We're going to go on location and call long distance and talk with Kim. Let's call now, shall we?
Hi, is Kim there? Hi, Kim, this is Tim. How you doing? Hey, look, we're putting together a show right now, and we have the capability of hooking you up by satellite, and we were wondering if you had a few minutes that you could talk with us.
About what?
Oh, just about growing up in the Darling family. Do you mind?
I guess so.
Okay, good. We're going to try to hook you up by satellite, and we'll just be asking you some questions about growing up, you know, as a kid and on Broadway Street and stuff. Just to answer the best you can. Do you remember when you first came and lived with us?
Yeah, I do.
What do you remember about that?
The biggest smell. Just the smell we got.
Yeah? Do you remember how long ago that was? That was quite a while ago. What do you remember about Broadway Street?
The house it was in. Around us. There's a lot of memories there.
Yeah.
I've learned to ride bike up and down the sidewalk. We played, like a lot of sports like baseball, football, things like that when we were going out.
A lot of games.
A lot of games, yeah.
We have a little bit of problems. Can you try to speak up a little louder?
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Of all your growing up in the Darling family, what do you think was your very most exciting time? Does anything stand out in your mind?
Exciting time. Going to school. I think that was probably the most exciting. Well, I was growing up with you guys,
Yeah.
so that was fun.
Did it seem different having a big family?
Yes, it was. Uh-huh.
And how did you get along with the boys compared to having a little sister?
Get along okay. Fine. Pretty good.
And what did you think about the holidays? Obviously, we had a lot of people around.
Oh yeah, it was exciting. Fun. And, it was fun getting together. Enjoying each other's company.
Well, that's great. That's really great. I want to ask just a few more questions, and then we're going to be done with this interview. Oh, wait a second. Looks like we're having some difficulties here with the satellite hookup. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but
Okay, well, is this done at Montauk?
yes, that's right. In fact, I'm not quite sure what's going on, but we're going to have to just cut this interview short because there's obviously something wrong with our link, and maybe we could finish talking tomorrow. Okay? But hey, I appreciate you talking with me, and I'll see you tomorrow. Other next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones.
When we first moved there, she had a little dog, a little Pekingese dog that used to try to bite everybody all the time. She was a real inquisitive person.
Good word.
She was always, well, she was always trying to find out what you kids were up to and what you were doing. And I don't think she approved too much of some of the things that went on at our house, like having old junker cars in the driveway and kids building things out in the backyard and burying things out in the backyard and things like that.
Mrs. Jones?
Tell us about Mrs. Jones.
Now, Mrs. Jones was kind of interesting. She was about, I don't know, in her 70s, and she had a Pekingese that she fed a quart of cottage cheese to every day, named Chang. And her main thing was making up stories about the neighbors. She would go to one neighbor and say, boy, isn't it terrible what they're doing across the street, and isn't that disgusting, and boy, what do you think of that? And then she'd come across the street and say, boy, you ought to hear what they're doing over there. And she had so many stories going on, and none of them had any bit of truth to them at all. But she would feed Gabriel over the fence every day. She would feed him French toast or waffles. She lived alone in the house, and she'd say, oh, I just had a little bit left over after breakfast, would throw 8 waffles over the fence. She was apparently making them for the dog. But she said she liked having him around because he was protection. Nobody was going to sneak up on her as long as the dogs.
Of us have a lot of deep appreciation for Mrs. Jones. Remember her? I hope she can still hear. I guess she heard we were coming.
And now a short intermission with a word from our sponsor.
Important things and characteristics of face pliability is really important because you need to be able to move your lips, your cheeks, and of course your eyebrows, because those are crucial. To be able to move them simultaneously is something that just can really freak out an audience, which can just make you come alive on camera. In fact, you can do amazing things with your eyes, as you can see a close-up of my eyes. Now I see 2 of you, and you still see 1 of me.
Rosie. I hope he freezes that way.
Now, as you can see, that took a lot of talent, a lot of practice, many hours in front of the mirror, which I encourage you, as a home viewer of the up-and-coming new videos released with your own expression and your own avant-garde styles, to continue and work on these methods day in and day out. And don't forget, the most important thing above all the facial expressions is your neck. Remember this. So, I'll see you on the news.
You know, Tim, you've got handstands in a lot of different places.
That's right. In fact, I don't think there's anywhere I wouldn't do a handstand. 4th floor?
Yeah, 4th floor.
You know, in fact, I'm the safest in a handstand.
Yeah? Well, look out here.
This is no big challenge. Of course, you know, Mom and Dad get petrified.
I heard you did a handstand on top of a sky tower. Where was that, at Niagara Falls?
Niagara Falls, yeah. I did one right on the edge of the cliff there. And
what about on a camel?
That's right. In fact, someone gave me a camera because I did a handstand right on it.
And where else was it? On the
Pyramid.
747 and a pyramid?
Yeah. In fact, you know, there's actually nowhere I won't do a handstand.
Yeah, look at this. We're right up even with the Holt Center in the Hilton even.
I remember one time you were doing gymnastics in high school, and your hand caught in your on the bar, and you were hanging there, I know, and they pried you loose to the bar, and you broke your wrist or sprained your wrist. I remember that, and I didn't have very many comfortable moments then. Every time the fool kid would get on something, he'd break his arm.
No big deal. You know, Mom and Dad, they're just paranoid. Mom and Dad always worries about me, and they say I'm accident prone and stuff, but, you know, that's stupid. I just like to do things that are daring. One of the things I've always liked growing up is hanging on the edge, doing things that most people wouldn't normally do, like balancing on the edge of the top of a building. See, I hardly ever fall and do things. In fact, I'm the safest in a handstand. Watch this. How's that? Whoa. Whoa.
Tim? Tim, you okay? You okay? Is he okay?
Tim.
Is he okay?
Tim.
Tim, are you okay?
Tim. I hate when I do that.
We're here with Claude Darling now, and we are going to change the pace of things a little bit from here on out. We, at the beginning of this tape, indicated that we were going to be doing some up close and personal interviews of this dynamic and interesting family, as it was put. And I think now it's time to get up close and personal. For instance, we're informed from a reliable source that some of the people in the family have got some things that they'd rather not bring right out. For instance, your oldest daughter, Claude, is involved in what kind of work?
There's a stripper.
Well, that's very interesting. What do you feel about that?
She does the finest quality work of anybody I've ever seen.
Well, like I said before, there are some things that not everyone's saying. Let's find out from the source. Hi, Joan. we were earlier talking to Dad, and he'd indicated that you were involved in a interesting profession. Is that true?
Yeah, so I could be classified as a stripper part-time.
Yeah.
Part-time stripper.
You work just down the street at the Jasper Tavern?
Yeah.
Like I said, there's some things that not all of us know. So Chip, you've been involved over the years in a lot of different kinds of electronic experiments, different hobbies, different activities. At one point in time, I know, if I recall properly, you were involved in trying to make your own submarine. Isn't that true, out of one of your cars?
Yeah, that's got to be the most unusual. I put my Toyota Land Cruiser 100% completely underwater, so you couldn't see one bit of it.
Okay.
So Chip, you carry a gun most of the time, being connected with the police department and that type of thing. Is that because you're with the CIA?
If such operations did exist, I wouldn't be disposed to talk of them at this time.
Well, how many guns do you normally carry?
No, maybe 30 or 40.
Chip, for talking about those things with us, I hope we didn't jeopardize your position any. 30 or 40? Unbelievable.
Most exciting thing that ever happened to you?
Mother. She was working for me at Double D Printing Company, and I didn't even know she existed other than she was an employee. And I asked her if she would go home after my first wife passed away. I asked her if she'd go home and take care of Joan until I got home. And she lived in the back house at 995 West 8th. And Joan would most of the time spend out the back house, and I was left alone. And one night I remember Betty came and says, I wonder if I could take Patty to the show. And I said, sure, or Joan to the show. I said, sure, that's all right. Well, I was going to be stuck there all by myself in that big house. And I said, well, how about me going with you? So we went to the Furs, I remember, out here. Furs Bowling Alley used to be a movie house. We went to Furs, and but Joan spent more time out in the back house than she did in the front house, see? And they became very, very close friends. But Betty would go home from the shop every afternoon and school out and take care of Patty. And then when I came home, she'd go back to her back house again. And so for a while, one thing led to another over a period of years that I don't know how it developed, but I popped the question, and finally, after much persuasion, she accepted. And that was the highlight of my life, I think.
Joan, what do you remember about Mom and Dad being married?
Old, which is pretty close. And Mom worked at the shop. And I don't remember all the details, but she spent quite a little bit of time taking care of me because she lived in the back house. We used to call it the back house. It was an apartment on the back of the property. And she was my favorite friend. And I used to go out there and stay overnight. And so when I noticed that there was a little something developing, and here I was about 8 years old, and just hoping that everything worked out. And so I would run and tell Dad stuff, and I'd tell Mom stuff, and I was so excited when they finally decided they were going to get married. And when the big day finally came, of course, there's all the preparations and getting the wedding gown, and it was for a little 8-year-old girl, really an exciting time. And so I got sick. They all say that it was nerves, but I say I had the flu. But anyway, and during the wedding, when the ceremony was finished, and I was really sick all the way through, just feeling awful, sitting over to one side of the church. And when they were coming down the aisle, I threw up. And in the wedding pictures, you can see that all the heads in the congregation were turned towards this poor little kid throwing up in the ceremony. And, and then they left for the honeymoon, and there was Mom's sisters and stuff there to take care of me. But I was sick for a couple days, so I don't think it was nerves. I think it was a flu. Yeah.
Okay, good. As you can see, we started in the rain this very show, and now it's sunny. It's kind of amazing how Eugene works, but throughout this last 45 minutes, we've seen a lot of neat things about the Darling family, and it's been my pleasure to be your host and just to learn some of the interesting stories that some of you had to say. I hope you'll join us next year at this very time, and we'll do it again.